Jethro Tull have been in existence since 1967, but they did have a 5-year break fairly recently. They were named after an 18th century agriculturalist who, I believe, invented the thing called the seed drill. They're a British band, and they could be thought of as a curiosity if it wasn't for the fact that they'd been so successful. So folk in Britain comes in two main varieties, which are English folk and Celtic folk. So Celtic folk is mostly from Scotland and Ireland, but Northumberland and some other places join in as well. English folk has developed a distinctive nasal style of singing, and Jethro Tull have managed to successfully merge English folk, heavy rock, and at times classical and progressive elements. And they managed to change styles with the times while remaining their folk rock core sound. Their frontman, Ian Anderson, is a charismatic mad wizard who sings lead vocals and plays the flute famously on one leg. He took flute playing into some quite inventive sounds, and with the heavy rock and sometimes otherwise backing, writes and sings observational songs about life and people, and in good folk tradition, but delivered in a fairly heavily folk vocal style. The result is instantly recognisable, iconic and unique, and the whole thing is delivered with humour, admittedly sometimes quite dark humour. They've released 23 studio albums, 2 of which have been fairly recently, and they've had a good deal of success, and I've gone through musicians at quite a rate. The list of ex-musicians from Jethro Tull is huge, the only constant having been Ian Anderson. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was Jethro Tull's second album, and this may have been the first time that I've actually listened to it. It's certainly the first time I've reviewed it. Now, so the history of my reviewing is such that before this series of reviews, I was doing a blog-based series of reviews on a list of 1,000 greatest albums that I had compiled from a list by Enemy and a list by Rolling Stone and the list from Ranker. I gave that up when I discovered this list because this is a much better list. But during that list, I had reviewed 2 or 3 Jethro Tull albums. Previous to that as well, I used to do, I tackled a list, a similar kind of put together list, but specifically for progressive rock. And so also reviewed several Jethro Tull albums during that cycle as well. So this is the first one in this cycle, in this list of 3,000 albums, a Jethro Tull album, and it is not one that I have reviewed before. And the context of this apparently is that this was their first album that actually was folk rock, their first one being predominantly blues rock. This album shows, or is at this point in time, Ian Anderson is starting to take control of the band, and as a result, they had a change in guitarist from Mick Abrams, who didn't like the change in direction, and they took on Martin Barr, who was their guitarist for quite a long time from this album onwards. The album got to number 1 in the UK and number 20 in the States. And I would describe it as, well, some of the tracks are heavy rock with flutes and other stuff in there, and some of them are more acoustic songs, so they're a bit more folky with an emphasis on acoustic guitars, again often with flute in there. Bourrée was the only single from the album, and it was based on some music by J.S. Bach, so there's a classical influence here as well. I would say often it's quite musically complex and quite meticulous. There's some odd time signatures going on and bar lengths at times. They're obviously enjoying themselves in terms of the music and enjoying the complexity of what they're doing and their ability to play their instruments. There have been accusations of progressiveness thrown at this album. I'm not really sure that they stick very well. I think it's more kind of heavy rock, but I think it's the slight complexity and the rhythmic elements where people might start to think that, Jethro Tull is progressive. They moved into more progressive stuff later on in their career. There's still elements of blues rock in here at times. There's quite a lot of different influences in here. It's quite a melting pot of stuff. The flute stuff here, it's definitely a focus. It's starting to show Ian Anderson's idiosyncratic approach to playing, so it includes things like vocalizations between and even during some of the notes as he plays. So musically, yeah, I found it very interesting. His singing, as always, I find quite nasal. He has a thing where syllables are sometimes sounded over several notes, so it might be la, give the syllable cow, let's say cow, or something like that. It's a very English folk delivery, and the delivery is quite matter of fact. If it has any kind of emotion to it, you'd say it might be laconic, but it's definitely kind of letting the words speak for themselves. And the songs are mostly story songs of real life and situational stuff. In terms of what they're about, my favourite two songs here are Back to the Family, which is a song about a guy thinking about his life in the city is too busy. People keep trying to ring him on the phone and he's getting sick of it. And so he goes back to the family and the kind of quiet life out in the countryside. But when he's back there, he gets bored and decides to go back to the city. And then he complains again. So it's got this kind of cycle to it. It's nicely observed. And Fat Man, which is an interesting track. The chords for the song We Used to Know are really similar to the chords for the Eagles song Hotel California. Now, this is known. There is some discussion of this on Wikipedia, and the conclusion is that it's probably not. So Hotel California came later. Hotel California probably wasn't a direct copy of We Used to Know. And Ian Anderson has said that he knows there's a similarity, and he reckons that Hotel California is a much better song than We Used to Know. And I'm going to give him kudos for saying that. I enjoyed it, actually. It was refreshing. I like the kind of elements of complexity. I like the humour. It's taken me a while with Jethro Tull to get past his voice and the nasalness of it. And I'm slowly starting to enjoy Jethro Tull more as I listen to their albums. Mostly I've done so through doing these reviews. So, I quite like it. What do you think? Please tell me. Don't be shy. Talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.
Don't want to be a fat man. People would think that I was just good fun. Would rather be a thin man. I am so glad to go on being one. Too